So now looking at Dada Surrealism and photography, and how does it come into play with some of these different art movements. And so if you remember Duchamp's fountain, just talked about it in the last lecture, talked about it a few times in class. That's Dadaism. Uh, Dada as a movement was started in Switzerland as a reaction against World War One. I believe we talked, briefly about it. How they thought, the war was stupid, everything is dumb. Therefore, art becomes dumb, and just everything that goes along with it. So if you keep thinking, why am I looking at this stupid urinal? Why am I looking at this stupid piece of art? Well, that's the point of it. It's supposed to be stupid. So one of other Marcel Duchamp's, his painting Nude Descending a Staircase, and compare it with Maybridge that we looked at briefly before. His playing around with capturing the motion. So same idea that Duchamp has with Nude Descending a Staircase. Uh, so one of the sort of the funny thing about the snobbery of art, and Marcel Duchamp making a mockery, the idea that a nude would not move in space, a nude model, in a picture, in a painting, a sculpture, a nude is going to stand there and pose. A nude is going to recline. It's going to be more this refined type of image. Well, Duchamp being uh, Duchamp, decided, well, I'm going to have a nude, and it's going to be walking down some stairs. It's quite possible that he was aware of Maybridge and his, experimenting type photography with capturing movement and motion, the way he did with the horse, setting up all the little tripwires. So, setting up a series of cameras with tripwires so that this model, as she's descending the stairs and turning around on the stairs, again, it's doing the same type of thing. So this idea of movement being captured. So here we have a photo montage, a collage, Houseman, ABCD self-portrait. Uh, and we've all done collages at some point. So basically what's going on here, uh, a collage, and it's as far as what you should be seeing, what it should be about. Good luck. I can't really tell you on that one. Like I said, with Dada, it's all about the ridiculousness and making fun of things. And one of the other things going on, Bauhaus, although this photograph from 2007, but Bauhaus originally a art school in Germany, and back during the 19 teens and 1920s. Of course, it got shut down in the 30s with the rise of the Nazi Party and Hitler. Hitler was not a fan of the Bauhaus. It was degenerate art, as he put it. But with the Bauhaus, it was a new way of thinking. The Mies van der Rohe that we just looked at, I talked a little bit about form and function. And that was like the big thing with the Bauhaus more progressive way of thinking of things need to look good, things need to be pleasing to the eye, as well as to have a well-defined function. So art, architecture, all the different forms of art sort of coming together and playing and feeding off of one of each other. What Bauhaus becomes about. Some of uh, Maholi Nagy's work, photogram. And a photogram is simply, if you go into a dark room, if you're doing it old school, you have the enlarger, shines the light down with the enlarger. You put your sheet of photo paper under the enlarger. However, whereas before you normally would put your negative, with the photogram you don't always put a negative. You just start putting stuff on top of the paper. Uh, it can be, in objects where you see kind of like a spatula or paintbrush. Looks like, there's maybe a little piece of wire gate from like a little hamster cage or something like that, or just, simply your hand. You just put your put these objects down on the sheet of paper, expose it to the light. You can do multiple exposures to get, as you can see, kind of different values and different shades of gray and some of the objects. So it really just, you're playing around with no negative. You're creating a photographic image without a negative, essentially. Uh, and his, mass psychosis, where it gets into some of the ideas of colonialism to try to keep things, simple and short. Europe during the 19th century decided that the rest of the world was theirs to exploit. So that's why, they have the countries in Africa where they speak German and French, and a lot of, English over in India. That was part of colonialism. These, countries in Europe dividing the world up, exploiting these other countries for what they have to offer. So in sort of mass psychosis, you're starting to get a little bit of that, where you have these people huddled together, sort of this the native group doing one of their type of ceremonies, something like that. They're huddled together doing that, and you have the soldier kind of nearby holding a gun. There was a lot of devastation with colonialism. So, sort of speaking out against that, as well as, starting to use, not only photographs, uh, but using, other types of negative, making your own negative, so that you have, these mechanical looking line drawings and things like that. Uh, we've looked at photos before where they're cutting up negatives, doing a bunch of cut and paste, recreating a negative by cutting things up, reassembling it. So it's basically, what's going on here, uh, as well as, with this one, so that it's, more of a collage, creating this collage element. Again, Dada is strange. It's weird. And also a little bit of surrealism in a way. Your guess is good as mine on what this could be about. Next, Man Ray. Man Ray, actually an American artist, sees an armory show. The armory show was like one of the first shows celebrating the high modern art of Europe. Of course, being shown in America, mass majority of Americans hated everything going on. Man Ray, of course, loved it. Actual name Emanuel Rudnitsky, takes the name Man Ray as just for the further absurdity of it all. So here we have the gift. So let me ask you, how many of you would want to iron your shirt with this? First of all, why do we use an iron? An iron is used for making clothes look nice, clean, pressing it, getting rid of the wrinkles. It's more professionally presentable. what happens if you take an iron and you put tacks and you try to iron it? Well, you're going to destroy it. You're going to be doing the exact opposite of what this item was originally used for. It's for him getting this ready-made sculpture mentality. So it kind of kind of a little bit about what Deschamps is doing, but getting into sort of the surrealism, where surrealism, you're toying with the notion of the object, you're toying with the notion of the idea. How many of us might have had some type of dream? Surrealism comes from dreamlike imagery, where it's like you're trying to do something, and in your mind, it's like, oh yeah, I'm making a cake or whatever, and you're following all the steps, and then as part of your dream, it's like you pull a squid or whatever kind of crazy thing out of the oven. So that's sort of the double play of this surrealist object, as well as taking some of the ideas of man Dada and surrealism coming together. So a note from Man Ray on Dadaism. So just give you a bit to read it. And that sums up Dadaism. And so here we have, Man Ray, female nude. Of course, not a female. One of the things that you really get into the Dada and the Surrealists and stuff going on in Paris at the time, going out France in general. France was the art capital of the world at this time. Again, it's the ridiculousness, the absurdity. So for them, a man posing as a woman, that's part of making this thing absurd. If you really had the time, you could put this whole long list of other paintings. All these great renowned, known paintings, and the Man Ray female nude would be kind of the same thing along the same lines, but as opposed to this idea of high classical idealism, which for some reason always goes back to a nude female being portrayed, making fun of that by having a male portray a female. So again, it's just getting to the absurdity of it all. Man Ray doing his rayograph. Uh, Again, just laying stuff on the sheet of paper, exposing it. Um, Whatever you put down on the paper to sort of help create your image. Just that you're not using a negative. Man Ray laid claim to inventing this process, so it's often referred to as the rayograph. One of his other photos, Ingres' violin. So Ingres did a painting, the Grand Obelisk, and it's essentially similar type of pose of the female, uh, getting into mimicking his painting, which coming from the Romantics. So the Romantics is about looking at the colonial things, like we just talked about with colonialism. Romantic painters were looking at all the different colony things and taking some of their imagery, their ideas, morphing it into European style paintings. So it's sort of the play with Ingres here. Of course, sort of making fun of the shape by putting the sound holes that you would see on a violin. So basically, sort of making some of those and taping them onto his model. So sort of making fun of the idea of Angra in this classical beauty sense, that it's the female body's not this statuesque pristine thing. The female body is really a violin. So again, it's the play on things that you get with Dada, and even the surrealism. And then Tears, where Man Ray, putting these little, they were like little glass beads or something, so mimicking this idea of tears. So again, just playing around with a lot of things. Sleeping Woman, again, it's sort of this photography trick where you expose your paper real quickly, then you put a negative in, and expose the paper with the negative, so that you get kind of this crazy visual effect with it. And a statement about Dada. It's shocking. It's all over the place. It was supposed to shock the establishments. It was supposed to annoy the establishment. It was to you know, piss them off. Make them mad. Art is dumb. Art is ridiculous. So here in the end, we have the prayer, meant to shock and be offensive to people, to shock and offend the establishment.